Caro Ramsay, and I'd just like to thank the good people of Aberdeen for giving the writers that were supposed to be doing events in Aberdeen over lockdown and later the chance just to do a wee sort of video cast or a wee podcast just to say what they're about and what we've been doing. And we really hope to make our way up there again in late autumn, hopefully early winter. When we went into lockdown, our publisher said to us, make an area in the house that's really good for doing video recordings and doing podcasts and do this and do that, and make sure that behind you you've got your books and that you're in front of a bookcase and your books are right here, and have your own books facing out and all this nonsense. You'll see lots of people on the telly doing that. So just to break tradition, I've come to just sit here on my window seat because I think you'll agree that my window is much nicer than any book you'll probably have ever read. That as a cover would just be fantastic. So this is like Tales from the Window Ledge part 23, I think we're at. 2020 was going to be a really big year for me. I had 6 books published. 2 of them managed to get in before lockdown, and the other 4 I have not yet had a physical copy of the book in my hand because they're all stuck in various warehouses and things like that all around the place. My big publishers' dinner in London was cancelled. My thing at the London Book Fair was cancelled. The big meeting with some international people was cancelled. And this has all been done now by me sitting on the end of the phone. One phone call went on for 2 hours. I've been on the radio, I've been doing all sorts of live things that I'm not very comfortable with. And I think as an author, you get used to kind of being in quite a lot of control of your own environment. You sit in your own wee room and you type away and that's your life and that's fine. It's quite unusual to be pulled out into this other sort of environment where, you're being interviewed live on the radio with, like 10 minutes notice because someone else has dropped out. And I was interviewed by one reporter who will remain nameless. And halfway through the interview on the phone, she said, I'll just have to stop. She says, my shoulder's getting sore. And I said, why, what are you doing? She says, to tell you the truth, she says, I'm lying in my bed typing this up on a laptop as we speak. So with my other occupational hat on as an osteopath, I gave her a row for using her laptop in bed and told her to buy a wee tray because that would be a lot better for her. So in the lockdown, everybody helping everybody. So 6 books out this year. The first book that came out was the paperback version of Mosaic, which is the standalone book that came out, published in hardback last year. This book sold out in America within a fortnight. So we were going to America at the end of this year. And as I sit here and record this, we still are, but everything's kind of been cancelled that we were going to do. So we've got a couple of plane tickets to go over there and do nothing. So don't know what's happening about that. So Mosaic, the standalone, did really, really well. And then we had the hardback original that came out with the other publisher. It's very confusing, this, the Red Snow. And I'm now into book 13, 14 of the series. I'm finishing off 13, planning 14 of the Anderson and Costello series. And there comes a time when you just don't want to write the same book again and again and again. And I don't know if any of you have got into a really long series and you enjoy them, but they get a wee bit sort of samey after a while. And I like to set myself a bit of a challenge. So I wanted to do a book about the unreliable narrator because my favourite book in the world is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and anybody who's read it will know exactly what I'm getting at. And Mosaic was my go at the unreliable narrator. And due to the nature of the unreliable narrator, there is no way it could be a police procedural when the reader knows the character so well. And the other thing I wanted to have a go at was the locked room mystery, and the Red Snow was my go at the locked room mystery. And somebody, namely my mother-in-law, flung this book at me after she'd read it. Not that she didn't enjoy it, she did enjoy it, but it was after I gave her it. She said to me, you realise this is a book about people stranded in snow and there's a sort of murderer going about murdering them all. She says it's a bit like being in lockdown with a serial killer, but apart from that she did really enjoy it. This is doing really well and it will be published in paperback next year. The other 4 books that came out were the first 3 of the series were all republished, and they were all published beautifully with matching covers. This was the first one, Absolution. I don't have these in hard copy. They're in a warehouse somewhere unknown. Absolution, and I had to do a podcast for someone yesterday and read the start of Absolution, and it's about maybe 7 or 8 years since I've read it, and I thought, it's actually quite good. I couldn't believe that I'd written that, and I also don't remember writing any of it, which is a bit bizarre. So beautifully repackaged. And then the second one, Singing to the Dead, came out. This is the one I had the famous conversation with Sophie Hannah about. I was at an event with her and people were up buying books, and this lady came up and she said, which one is your best book? Which one will I buy? Which one's your best book? And I said, well, really, your last book should always be your best book, because technically you should get better as a writer as you go on. And Sophie Hannah leaned across and said, yes, but which one's your favourite book? And I have a sneaking liking for this one, because it really is a nasty wee book. There's a lot of really, really horrible people in it who all get their just desserts at the end. And that's the great thing about being a crime writer. If someone annoys you, you can just kill them. And then Dark Water, which is Alex Gray's favourite book of the series. And this book, because there are things that everybody is scared of. And one thing that everybody is scared of is being caught under ice in fast flowing water. So that's how they all end up in this book. And all the publishing news and everything that was going on, all those dinners and that I didn't go to in the end and couldn't manage to fit it all in, was for this book, Sideman, which was republished in paperback just last month. And it's doing really well. It's getting rave reviews all over the place. And I think this book has appealed to a lot of people in lockdown, because it's a book that's got a lot of fresh air about it. It's set not quite up the North Coast 500, but up in that part of the world. And a lot of people say, well, where did you get the inspiration for it? And the inspiration for it for me came about when I was sitting on the side of a hill. It was the middle of summer, so it was very, very wet, and I had almost a duvet on, and I was drinking hot soup to keep the hypothermia at bay. Typical Scottish summer. And I was looking across the glen, and I was watching people just walking the West Highland Way. Some of them looked as if they were carrying their own body weight in their rucksack. And I know that as they turn off that bend and they go further up another glen, there's no road, and there's also no mobile phone signal. And it's one of the few things that can make you appear very vulnerable, that maybe we don't think about. I think living in Scotland, you're a wee bit more aware of how dangerous the environment out there can be. But it seems to be quite tame to people who maybe don't know it that well. So yeah, always a wee bit of respect for the Scottish environment there. Writers have been discussing quite a lot on Facebook and our own wee forums about whether we've been finding it easier or more difficult to write in lockdown. I think my actual writing process has been the same, but I found it hard to find the time, because being a healthcare professional, I'm still consulting over Zoom and by phone and by email, and everybody in that field that I've spoken to has said it takes twice as long to do that as it does when you're having a face-to-face consultation with someone. So the day job has sort of expanded into my writing time. Plus there's lots of other people who aren't at work who think you're available because you're in the house, and they all sort of have a wee go and let's have a wee chat at this. And then of course with all the publicity stuff that was going on for the book, so it's really been a busy time. And it's fair to say that I think we have all authors have missed getting out and doing events with each other. They're such fun. Crime writers, I'm sure you know, are always a good laugh. You know, they're always guaranteed to be well entertained if you go to an event full of crime writers, especially if there's a wee glass of wine on the go. And we have really missed that. So from the point of view of doing this, and with regard to doing this, I thought it would be nice if I just put on Facebook, have you got any questions you would like me to ask? You know, if I was sitting in a virtual audience in Aberdeen, what are the sort of questions that you might like to ask me? So this is what the grand denizens of the Caro Ramsay Facebook page came away with. First question of how much of Costello is you? And the answer to that is very little. I am much more like Anderson. Costello is much more not determined than I am, but I certainly would not walk away from a job just to prove a point. Because in the Sideman, she starts the book by resigning because she knows that someone has done a murder, and Police Scotland have said she's not allowed to investigate it because the man's alibi is Police Scotland. So she's willing to put everything on the line to prove a point. I'm not like that. I would rather be Anderson and sitting at home and think a way of catching him, if indeed it was him that did it. Interesting. Music in your writing, what is your soundtrack? That was an interesting question because I know writers like Douglas Skelton, they write to music all the time, and when they actually write, they can hear music in their head as if they're writing a film script. And I don't at all. I hear the sounds of nature, really, or the sounds of the street. If I'm writing an urban scene, you'll notice that in my writing I tend to write about the noise that the car tyres make and the clickety click of people's heels, and at the moment in lockdown, the birds, you just hear them everywhere. So that's my more sort of soundtrack that I write. It's very difficult to describe the noise a magpie makes. If anybody's got any, is that called onomatopoeia? Yes. What is that cack 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 that they make? Very noisy and very loud anyway. Does Costello portray a positive role model for women? I have no idea. I write her as a woman because that's what she is, but basically she's a human being, and I think she's quite a half-decent human being, and most of her qualities I think should be found in either gender or any gender. So I don't really write with a point of view of a positive role model for him and a positive role model for her. They are what they are, and as long as they are true to their characters, I don't think it really matters what gender somebody is. How do you hide a body in permafrost? I wonder if that was a question from someone in Aberdeen. I did a thing in Aberdeen at the beginning of the year about forensic medicine and how to murder people and get away with it. It was very popular. I was a bit worried about the murder rates in Aberdeen after doing it. How do you hide a body in permafrost? I would say that you'd have to freeze it and then put it through a wood chipper and then maybe cook it and then put it somewhere where it is going to be eaten, because I'm presuming if there's permafrost there will be some sort of carnivorous animal about that will probably be quite hungry wherever you may be it Arctic foxes or polar bears or timber wolves or whatever the cold whatever cold animal you happen to have up there. So yes, feed it to an animal, but I would think about that. What's your favourite book? Already said that. It's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, who's also one of my favourite authors. Other favourite authors, definitely Reginald Hill and Henning Mankell, I would have to say. Scottish authors, Douglas Skelton, because every time I say that, he gives me a tenner. I like Michael Malone very much as well. Yeah, I would say they're my favourite Scottish authors. Would you write anything other than crime, and if so, what would you write? I would definitely write a children's book, and it would be the antithesis of Harry Potter. It'd be about a wee guy from Inverness who moves to Glasgow and he lives in a high-rise flat and he's very unhappy. And in the end, he saves the world from the personification of evil that for some reason in my head looks like Eureka Johnson. I don't know why, but that image just comes into my head. And if I ever get like a week off, I am going to sit down and write that novel. His name's Finn MacLean. I know the name of the wee hero. He spends the entire novel in a Viking helmet and an Inverness Cally Thistle football top. That's what I know about him. Yes, that's all the questions I have. I think we're pretty out of time, so I'm going to sign off now and say goodbye and have a really good think about where to hide a body in permafrost, as I hope to be going up to Aberdeen later in the year, and maybe there will be some hard frosty ground and I can practice that. So Caro Ramsay signing off, and thank you very much.